The Bucks are on the clock with Giannis. Shams of ESPN is reporting that the Bucks are very aware of what is at stake over the next few months in Milwaukee, and that if the team doesn't start winning soon, Giannis could force his way out. Now, to be clear, Giannis has always been very public about his desire to stay in Milwaukee and what it meant to him to win a title in 2021 with the team that drafted him and how that could set him apart historically. He's always been very clear about the fact that he wants to stay with the Bucks. His preference is to be a Milwaukee Buck for life. And he's never said anything contrary to that publicly. He's never been mumbling about, oh, maybe I want to go here, I want to go there. He's been frustrated at times with the lack of winning, but there's never been any real talk publicly from him about a trade request. It's all been speculation, and it's been years of speculation. But the other thing that he's always been clear about publicly, privately, everywhere, is that he wants to win. He wants to compete for titles, and everything that he does every year is to try and win a title, to try and win in the postseason. And right now, those two goals are clashing together because Milwaukee just has not been good enough over the last couple of seasons, and that has continued this season. And it's not just that they haven't been that good, it's that they've been unstable as a franchise. There's been so much change around Giannis over the last couple of seasons. Jrue Holiday being traded away. They bring in Damian Lillard. Multiple coaching changes. They've got Doc Rivers in there now. They're firing coaches midseason. An ownership change a couple of years ago as well. And at the center of it, the stabilizing force has always been Giannis. And that can wear on somebody over the years when it feels like the only reason the Bucks have been successful at all, to the extent that they have been successful over the last couple of seasons, is all about Giannis. And if it gets to the point where he feels like he can't win a title with Milwaukee, at that point, according to Shams, he would begin exploring other options because he would rather win somewhere else and leave Milwaukee than stay in Milwaukee and lose and not have a chance to win titles. And I actually don't think people understand just how unsuccessful the Bucks have been in the postseason since winning the title in 2021. That 2021 title, for good reason, is carrying a lot of weight, but they have not gotten past the second round of the playoffs since winning the title in 2021. The last 2 years, they haven't won a playoff series at all. They've lost in the first round. Giannis has been hurt. And at this point, if they have another similar kind of postseason, they only, win a couple of games, maybe they only win one playoff series, Milwaukee is very aware of what that could mean for their future with Giannis on the team. And this report specifically kind of comes out of nowhere. To me, feels a little bit like a warning. We've passed the trade deadline. Milwaukee has made the moves that they've been able to make, that they could have made. They trade away Chris Middleton, they bring in Kyle Kuzma, and at this point, it has been made clear to the organization, to teams around the league, that this is a pivot point postseason for Milwaukee. And this isn't the first time that we've been here with Giannis. It's always been clear that winning titles is the most important thing to him, and he'd prefer to do that in Milwaukee, but he will leave if he feels like he can't do that anymore. And they've done everything they can in the past to try and keep him. They brought in Jrue Holiday in the first place in a move that at the time, Giannis hadn't even signed an extension with the team. They were coming off of a disappointing postseason. They were looking to try and win the title the following year. They end up winning the title less than a year after trading for Jrue Holiday, but at the time they made the move, Giannis had not signed an extension. They trade for Jrue, he signs the extension, they win the 2021 title. And then when that stuff isn't working, when they're losing in the postseason, when Giannis is getting hurt, when they feel like offensively they're just not good enough, they trade away Jrue Holiday. They bring in Damian Lillard. They got rid of Mike Budenholzer. They've gotten rid of another coach midseason. They now have Doc Rivers. They've always been able to do whatever they can. They've always been willing to do whatever they can to prove to Giannis that they are willing to win. They're willing to spend a bunch of money. They're willing to trade future picks. They're willing to trade all these assets to try and win a title around Giannis because they know what is at stake if he leaves. Milwaukee knows that if Giannis forces his way out, goes somewhere else for agency trade, whatever the case may be, whatever they've been over the last 10 years that Giannis has been there, it's completely gone. Like, they're going to have very few chances over the history of their franchise, over the future of their franchise, to have an MVP caliber player like Giannis in Milwaukee. And they know that as soon as he leaves, as soon as he gets unhappy, their days as contenders are over. And they're looking at a half a decade long rebuild to try and get themselves back to where they've been at points during the Giannis era. So understandably, they're doing everything they can to keep him, but that time might be coming to an end. Because top to bottom, this is as bad as the roster has been in Milwaukee in a while. It's getting older. That was accelerated by bringing in guys like Damian Lillard, although obviously they swapped out Chris Middleton and brought in Kyle Kuzma. But generally speaking, the key pieces that have been there, Chris Lopez, Bobby Portis, who's now suspended for 25 games, even Giannis himself, these guys are getting older. They're getting more injury prone. They're not as good defensively since they've traded away Jrue Holiday. And although the Damian Lillard trade certainly is defensible, it has changed their roster in a way that they don't really have an identity anymore other than Dame can really shoot and Giannis is an MVP caliber player. Apart from that, they don't have this identity of this two-way team that they had when Budenholzer was there, where they had this reputation as an offensive team, but also were one of the best defensive teams in the league every single season. That's kind of gone out the window. They're old. They're not that talented overall outside of Giannis. They're missing future draft picks. They're missing on draft picks in general on a year-to-year basis where they're just not replenishing the talent at the back end. And it feels like a roster that Giannis is just carrying every single season. And then we get to the postseason, he has some freak injury and then he doesn't play and the team falls apart. And there's been some bad luck in there. Like Chris Middleton has been getting hurt a bunch lately, and that certainly has not helped their postseasons over the last couple of seasons. And probably one of the reasons why they were willing to move on from Chris Middleton and bring in Kyle Kuzma at the deadline. But it's very clear based off their past, based off what they have moving forward. This is a gigantic moment in the history of Bucks basketball. And if they don't win a playoff series, if they struggle even to get out of the second round, I really could see the Giannis stuff heating up this offseason. If that was to be the case, what would be the teams to keep in mind? Well, of course, the Knicks are a team that's going to be mentioned. That would be difficult, quite frankly, with how their roster is built. One, from an expense standpoint, because they've got Brunson, they've got Karl-Anthony Towns. I would assume that Bridges and or Anunoby would get moved in the deal. One, for salary reasons. Two, maybe they could trade those guys to different teams and get draft picks and then be able to send those picks to Milwaukee, because as it stands, the Knicks don't have draft picks to trade away in exchange for Giannis. They traded all of them for Mikal Bridges. And given the fact that Giannis can't hit free agency until 2027, this would have to be a trade for the Knicks, but that's always a team that you're going to see mentioned. A couple of other teams to mention here. Of course, the Lakers are always going to be an option, especially when it comes to free agency over the next couple of seasons. Like if they're not able to re-sign Luka and or LeBron is retired by the time 2027 rolls around, like that Luka Giannis, dream of having those two guys play together is definitely a real possibility in LA if they're able to keep Luka, because the 2027 offseason, they're going to have cap space. They're not going to have LeBron on the team anymore, I presume. And even though they're going to continue to add pieces over the next couple of years to try and keep Luka happy, they could definitely plan on having cap space when Giannis becomes a free agent, or just potentially have some assets to trade in exchange for him. Miami is always a team to keep an eye on. They've been, on the hunt for Giannis for half a decade at this point. Before Milwaukee made the Jrue Holiday trade and won the 2021 title, Miami definitely was circling as a possible option, as was Dallas at the time when they had Luka. The Rockets are an interesting team over the next couple of seasons because they have all of these trade assets, and that's certainly a guy that would fit within what they want to do. I'm not sure that there's any real connection there between him and Houston, but it would at least be an interesting fit. And then I would also put the Nets in there as well. They've always been a team that has been on the hunt for stars. They're going to have a bunch of cap space over the next couple of summers, potentially have some really nice young talent on the team over the next couple of seasons. And their goal, their plan has always been to try and position themselves to redo the Kyrie KD thing just with a different cast over the next couple of seasons, and Giannis certainly would be on their list. Now, there's a bunch of other teams we could talk about in terms of possibilities, but the real question is, how likely is this? Is it actually a possibility that Giannis ends up on a different team within the next 12 months? I actually do think it's possible. It completely depends on what happens in the postseason for Milwaukee this year. If they are once again losing in the first round, losing in the second round, especially if Giannis is healthy, because they've had the excuse certainly last year of just not having a healthy roster. No Middleton for parts of the series. Dame was hurt for parts of the series. Giannis got hurt before the series even started. All that stuff has been an excuse for them in the past. But if he's healthy and that they've got Kuzma and Lillard and Lopez and Portis and all these other guys out there, and they're still not able to advance in the postseason, I think then the alarm bells are officially going to be going off in Milwaukee. And again, it would all have to do with a lack of winning. If Milwaukee is successful and they're contending and they have a chance to win titles, you don't have to worry about Giannis leaving. That's been the case the entirety of his career. The only reason this would change, the only reason Giannis would be available potentially on a new team in the next 12 months is if Milwaukee is not winning, is not in contention for titles. Because as much as he wants to be a Buck, the only other thing that supersedes that would be above that would be his desire to win titles. If that doesn't happen, things could get dramatic very quickly.